Hey, I'm Morgan from finepoints.biz, and today I'm going to be doing a question and answer session with all of your guys' bookkeeping questions. So I collected questions from different places and I've put them all together. I have my computer sitting here today. This will probably be a little bit more casual format. I probably won't edit every single piece of dead space as much as I usually do. I'll just go through these questions and chat with you guys. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. That helps me out so much. Helps YouTube know that you're engaged in my video and you want to see more like these. And don't forget to hit the red subscribe button down below to get a bookkeeping video from me every week. So the first question is from Alexis, and she asked, at what point would you deny services to a potential client? So that's a really good question. One instance that I probably wouldn't take on a client is if they're really just too small and I don't think that they can or should afford a bookkeeper yet. So in that case, I might be like, great, you're getting started in your business. Why don't you contact me in like 6 months to a year, and then maybe you'll have like the income that will really be able to support a bookkeeper. As well as if a client doesn't want to use QuickBooks, then I usually won't take them on because I really just want to specialize in QuickBooks and I don't want to be learning a bunch of different programs all the time because that's not efficient for me, and I'm able to charge a higher amount if I really specialize and have that niche in just QuickBooks. And then other times I've found that sometimes there's just like not a good fit, like in any other job situation, usually like both people kind of like sense it, either like maybe like sometimes morals aren't the same or just your style, or maybe the client is kind of unwilling and unable to have someone work remotely and they just don't have like the technology in place for that. So just like those type of styles. I wouldn't say like the phrase deny services, seems like kind of dramatic to me, but yeah, so I don't really think it as denying services or like firing a client, which I would do if I needed to, if they weren't working out or if they weren't paying me or something. But I do think that usually it's just you kind of feeling out to see if you guys are a good fit together. All right, and then she also asked, have I ever come across a client's books that I wasn't able to reconcile? So personally, no. I was trying to think back. I can't remember a time that I like really couldn't find an error. Like usually there's always something. If something's off, you're like, usually you can just go back through the bank and find it. I know that there is a forced reconciliation function in QuickBooks that you can use if you can't, if you're off by like a few cents and you can't find it. And then I believe it makes a journal entry and it has its own like expense category in the chart of accounts that just says like reconciliation discrepancy or something. So I know we learned about that in like classes I've taken, and then I've heard other bookkeepers talk about that. And it kind of is a little bit of a bookkeeper like discussion. Like some bookkeepers are like, you should never ever use that because, there's something wrong. Like those few pennies are telling you something's wrong in your books and you need to figure out what it is. And it took me a while to kind of grasp this, but really like a couple pennies could be like, so you have your income and your expenses. So say you have $1,000 like incorrect extra income, and then you have $999.99 of extra or of an error in your expenses. So those things, will equal out to just be like a penny or a very small amount, but really the error is like almost $2,000 worth of mistake. If you're not supposed to have this and you're not supposed to have this $1,000. And of course, yeah, it equals out, but those small pennies, those small errors or a couple dollars can help you uncover maybe a bigger problem within your books. And so that's kind of like one school of thought of bookkeepers, like never use that function. And then the other school of thought is, the client is paying me, $40, $60, $70, $80 an hour to reconcile their books, and it's not worth my time because I'm actually going to be charging the client for that time searching for those pennies. So to the client, it's more money that they'd be spending than you're really saving them. So, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I would always try as hard as I can to find any discrepancies, but at some point I do think it's fine to use the reconciliation discrepancy function or the forced reconciliation. All right, and then Christina asked, okay, so she was kind of asking about the layout of my business and how I work with paperwork specifically. So she said, do I exchange any type of paperwork with clients, like receipts or invoices? And then do clients handle their own AP and AR? So that's like invoicing, their own invoicing and their own bill pay. So any accounts receivable and accounts payable. So she made the observation that the things I talk about most are bank reconciliations, financial statements, analysis, and then payroll is an add-on. And she said she's trying to start her business, so just trying to figure out what services to provide. So this actually made me realize that that is true. That's kind of almost like a niche or a specialty I have, that I kind of have the preference that I just want to be dealing with people's bank reconciliations and that type of thing, and I prefer not to take any paperwork. So you can definitely be a bookkeeper that deals with a lot more paper than I do, but that's just not my preference. So in terms of paperwork, I try as hard as I can not to take any of my clients' paperwork. I'll have them file their own receipts in their offices, and depending on the client and their size and the type of business, I've been starting to use the QuickBooks online receipt capture, so they can take a picture of it and it'll send it to QuickBooks, and then I can attach it to that expense. So that is a great way to go paperless. I know also sometimes, bookkeepers do use Dropbox or other types of online programs like that to deal with paper or deal with, records and stuff. So I did want to give you a couple examples of clients that I have done accounts payable and accounts receivables with. So I'll start with bill paying. So for a larger client I had, it was a nonprofit with about like 40 people that worked there. And I would go into their office once a week and basically pay bills for them and then do other things in QuickBooks as well. But how the bill paying worked was they would get all their paper statements in the mail. It was pretty paper based. And then there was different department heads. So I think there's 3 different departments. So the department heads would get their bill. They'd verify that was the right amount. They would sign it or approve it. And then they would code it. So tell me like what category they wanted it in QuickBooks. And then so each week I would have a stack of maybe like 20 or so bills to pay. And then I would put them in QuickBooks in the write checks area, and then print them out, and then mail them in the physical mail to each vendor. So, and in QuickBooks you can keep all the vendor information, so you can keep, it would usually be a lot of the same vendors. So every month I could, the addresses were saved in there, and then when they print it out, they print out in the check, so you can just get the little envelopes with windows where it peeks through. So it's pretty easy, and then all the checks are already in QuickBooks, and so when the vendor cashes them, you just would match what comes through the bank with what you've already entered in QuickBooks. So that is definitely a way to do bill pay, and so that's one option. That's a very paper-based system. And then in terms of invoicing, I worked for a client that was like a medical practice, and this one was a little bit more digital-based business. So it was a medical practice. So I was in charge of invoicing all the clients. And the difference there was it would go through insurance first. So anytime a patient would come to the medical practice, they would first get billed insurance, and then we had a separate like website or service that told me how much insurance paid and then how much was left to charge the patient. So then I would go say it was $130, I would take that $130, I would put it in QuickBooks as an invoice, and then I would email the invoice to the patient, and then they would be responsible for paying that. Often I had their credit card information on file, and so I could just run their credit card if they had approved that ahead of time. Otherwise, they could also bring a check into the office, and then someone in the office would cash it because I was off-site. So that worked well for that business. So that's just 2 examples of how you can do payables and receivables depending on the client and how they want their offices set up. Other clients just do their bill pay like maybe the owner would do the bill pay through their bank account, and then I would just see, all the expenses hit the bank. And then I would just categorize and be like, okay, Comcast, I know that's, internet and etc. All right, next one is Craig. So he asked about when you first get a new client, how you do it. So he said, when you get a new client, how do you set up opening accounts? And do you reconcile their bank account, or do you just record an opening balance when you take over? So this mostly depends on if the client is starting a new QuickBooks file or not. So anytime a client, say the client was using a different software, or they're just using Excel documents or just something other than QuickBooks, then when you open the QuickBooks file, you would record the opening balance. So whatever their bank account says on that day. And usually you'd start it on January 1st, not all the time, but typically a client would want their, QuickBooks file for an entire year. So you'd start it probably January 1st, you'd write the opening balance. That would be an equity account because it's money, it's not income that they made just then, it was equity that was already in the business. So in that case, if it's a new file, you record the opening balance. But alternatively, if they already had a QuickBooks file that was looking good, I would just, look over it, make sure that all the reconciliations look good, maybe reconcile the month previous, and then just start off wherever they ended, or where, I would just start with the present and go forward from there. Stephanie asks, how long do clients typically stay with you? Do you have a lifelong clients? And if so, how do you inform them of rate increases as I grow over the years? So that's a great question as well. I actually really haven't had to deal with this too much yet, because I worked, when my first daughter was born, I worked for a few years, and then I kind of took a pretty big step back when I had my second kid. So I gave away all the clients from the first couple years to other bookkeepers, and then I haven't really had to, do rate increases since then. But I would imagine you just do it similarly to, a hairdresser or any other service provider that has rate increases. Maybe give your clients some notice, be like, in 6 months, my rates are going up, and it's for these reasons, maybe because QuickBooks has raised their rates, and so my expenses have gone up. I have more experience now. So give them fair warning, give them kind of the reasons why, and then, I think it's perfectly understandable and reasonable for you to raise your rates from time to time. I think that's a normal part of business, and I think people will understand. And maybe if there's a client that's not able to afford that, maybe that's just a sign for both of you guys that maybe it's time to, end that relationship, and then maybe you can spend that time working for a new client. You'll have extra time to spend on someone else who is able to afford that. And then I have a lot of questions about just where to get that free training. And I made a video all about that, so I'll link it up in the cards and then down in the description box. You just want to make sure you go to QuickBooks Online Accountant, and then there's Pro Advisor training within there. It's totally free to sign up for QuickBooks Online Accountant. Definitely do that if you haven't already. Just being a Pro Advisor has a lot of benefits. You can, it's kind of like an industry standard. You can use this little badge on your website and say I'm a Pro Advisor and I'm certified in QuickBooks Online, as well as they have a directory where people can look you up, so you can make a little profile in there. So in theory, clients could find you that way. And then, the other thing I was gonna say about QuickBooks Online Accountant is try as hard as you can to find deals. A lot of times they'll have the deal that's if you sign up 5 new clients, they're only $5 each every month, and that's for 2 years. So that's, I think, the best deal I've seen on QuickBooks Online Accountant. But definitely try to get that deal if you can. All right, Sandra said that I work from home, but do I ever meet with my clients? So I definitely do, especially at the beginning as I'm kind of getting to know them. If it's a local client, then I will meet with them in person, either at their office or at a neutral location like a coffee shop or something. And then if it is someone that works or someone that's in another state, I'll usually do a conference call or 2 or 3 as we're kind of getting started, getting training, and I'm learning their business. So that just really helps build. Usually I use Zoom for that as well. It's a free resource that you can use for conference calls. That just helps really build like relationship with people, get to know them, and just the more you can communicate, the better, because that is a challenge from working from home, is just that, you know, you're not right there asking questions all the time. So I do find it can be pretty efficient, because I just have a list of all my questions, go through them all, and then we're able to communicate that way. So that works well. And then Sam asked, when billing clients, do I use an ACH feature via your bank, or is there another way? I would say, actually, a lot of my clients right now write me paper checks and put them in the mail, and I'm like, that's perfectly fine with me, because that's part of how their business system is working. Like, they are used to writing checks, and then there's no fee for me, which is nice. But any clients that don't want to use paper checks, I would probably use the QuickBooks, the merchant services through QuickBooks, mainly because it's easy, because it's all kind of tied together, and I wouldn't have to do extra work for it. And credit card fees, I would just fold into my pricing structure so that I wouldn't be charging them the 1%, 2%, 3%. Make sure it's included as part of my services. All right, Tracy asked, how do you find clients? I do have a video on how to get clients as a freelancer. I'll link it down below, so check that out for like a bunch of ideas. I would say my best clients came really from word of mouth and networking. I feel like that's how everyone says that's the best way to get a job now, and I would agree. Yeah, I think some of my best clients were like kind of like acquaintances, like classmates of my sister, or classmates of my husband, or just someone I knew, but like they weren't like my best friend, but they were kind of connected to me somehow, and then I was recommended to them. So yeah, I would definitely work on networking. That's awesome. Anytime you can get your name out there, tell your friends and family, post on your Facebook or Instagram that you're a bookkeeper and you're looking for clients, and you'd be surprised how many people need a bookkeeper and how common it is. And when people need a bookkeeper, they don't really know where to look sometimes, so they are happy to have you as a resource that's in their network. Who pays for QuickBooks? So bookkeepers do it both ways. Sometimes the bookkeeper will pay or the client will pay. How I usually set it up is, if the client already has a QuickBooks subscription and they're going and they're, I'm just taking over, then I won't change anything. I'll just pick up where they left off. They'll invite me as a user, and then I will work on their QuickBooks file. If it's a newer client who is new to QuickBooks, then I can get them a wholesale deal. And so then I would be paying for QuickBooks. As long as my clients meet like a monthly minimum, I personally cover the cost for them. So it's like kind of like free for them, even though it's kind of included in like my fees or my cost. So in that case, I'm paying for QuickBooks. I've also had it done where the client, for a variety of reasons, maybe they want to do the books themselves, or it's a friend or something, then they can buy QuickBooks at the wholesale price, my wholesale price, as a QuickBooks accountant member, and then I just charge them. Usually I charge them for the year, so I'll just send them an invoice at the beginning or the end of the year and be like, this is your QuickBooks subscription that I paid for you. And QuickBooks does have it set up where if you want to get that wholesale price, the bookkeeper has to be the one to pay, and then it's your choice how you want to be repaid for that. If you want to roll it into your services, or if you want to put a separate line item on an invoice, that's up to you. But bookkeepers do it both ways, so just kind of find out what's easiest for you and what makes the most sense. All right, and Ricky asked, how much should I charge clients when I do their bookkeeping? So this is still something that I am kind of working through and figuring out, and I want to like test it as much as I can before I get a video out for you guys. But I recommend, if you're just starting out, charge $40 an hour, and it depends on what area you live in, of course. Kind of, you might want to do some price matching or price research in your area and see how much bookkeepers charge. So start out there, then you can, as you get more experience, you can raise your rates every so often. Maybe when you get a new client, you'll quote them a little higher. There's also fixed pricing, which means just charging a set amount per month. That is preferable because then both you and the client know what to expect, and then if you do your quicker, then you're kind of rewarded for that because you have time left over and you get the same amount of money. So those are kind of the basics. I'd say start out hourly. For new clients, I start out hourly because it's often hard to figure out how long their books will take when you're first getting to know their business. All right, this video is getting pretty long, so I'm gonna cut it off for now for today's video. So thank you guys so much for submitting questions. Let me know in the comments down below any other questions you might have, and I can answer down there, or I can definitely include it in another video if it's something that I am getting a lot. So good luck, guys. I hope you enjoy starting your bookkeeping business, and I would love to talk to you more soon. Thanks, bye.